See, basically in today's in let's see the headlines first. Okay. So Ladakh. So apart from these headlines, I will also tell you what are some of the important areas that you have to be concerned about. I want you guys to know the difference between 5th and 6th schedule areas. Okay, Ladakh is demanding 6th schedule. Why? So you have to read this article and tell me why. So that is the first thing that you need to do. From this article, that is what I am expecting you to know. Yeah. Now, this is the first important article of the day, and followed by this one. Okay. So rest of the students are not, rest of the articles are not that important. So when you're talking about energy, what are we talking about here? This article is written by the Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas directly. So today's articles are very simple and straightforward. Okay, not much complication and not very highly relevant for your next year exam. So that's why I'm briefly cutting down the topics. See, with respect to energy, what should India's priority be like? Energy security. This is the priority of India. When I say energy security, what do you understand by it? Okay, not depending on other countries. At this point of time, 85% of our fuel needs are imported. This will cause current account deficit. We discussed this already, right? Energy Atmanirbharta. And this current account deficit will also increase inflation, which is not good for India. How it will increase, etc., we'll have a separate discussion, but just I briefly explained in the previous class. So the point of this article is what should be India's strategy to actually improve our economy. And few days ago we overtook Japan in 4th largest economy. We already discussed of what use is that when we don't have a per capita GDP, etc. So it is the context in which we have to understand this. We became 4th largest economy, but that is not enough. It should sustain that economic growth, and the fruits of that economic growth should be redistributed. And for that to happen, inflation should be controlled. One of the biggest way to control inflation is fuel prices. If you reduce fuel prices, it will sustain everywhere else also. So here you are talking about what are the kind of reforms that we need to carry out. See, first of all, what is the driver of energy demand? When India is growing, economy is growing, you need more companies, you need more people. For all of that, you need more energy. So we will be depending more and more on external sources. So to reduce that, we have to at least diversify our sources, right? And secondly, it will also have a pollution imperative. For example, if you are using petrol cars are much more polluting than e-vehicles. But if this e-vehicle power, you are getting it from coal, of what use is that? So you need to have a green power. So India wants to promote sources like green hydrogen. In very first classes last month we discussed natural hydrogen versus green hydrogen. You remember? So we have to tap into our natural hydrogen resources which are there in our Earth's resources. So this article is talking about the steps taken by the government. Since it is written by the minister himself, he will be listing down some reforms. See, for example, he wrote a point here. With energy demand expected to grow 2.5 times, 2.5x demand by 2047. So you can use these points directly from the article here. I think you may not be able to see, but just note down. So these are the points I want you to note down. 2.5x demand by 2047. Why do you need energy Atmanirbharta? To quote that, to support that, you can say India's energy demand is going by 2.5x by 2047 according to the ministry. Therefore, we need to have energy Atmanirbharta. Okay, that is one way to write. Okay, so now energy security will be about access, affordability, right? Availability. We spoke about all those points. So what did the government do? Firstly, in the upstream sector, oil and gas sector, India's exploration acreage. So exploration policies. See, when you're talking about the steps taken by the government, you have to talk about the entire supply chain of energy. Right from exploration, then allocation, then production, then refinement, end product, direct to the customer. This is the supply chain. At every stage, what is the step taken by the government? First of all, you have to know the geography of the region. How much oil do we have? Do we have oil? If yes, how much? Do we have gas? If yes, how much? We don't have much oil, but we do have gas. For tapping that natural gas, which is slightly cleaner than our petrol and diesel, do we have enough supporting policies? That is what you have to know. So there is something called OALP. Now, when you read the newspaper, I want you to know what that is. Open acreage licensing policy, meaning that there is a reformed method of conducting auction. Okay, so that is the first thing that you need to know. So simply I am giving this article in a question answer format. India wants to have energy security. What are the steps taken by the government? This is the first step. Then revised gas pricing mechanism. What happened here? The natural gas pricing, if it has to become an alternative to other fuels, it should be fairly priced. So when you attach this prices to the fuels and they become affordable, this will automatically become, much more economically competitive. So that is the second step taken. Revised gas pricing mechanism. And then you have something called airborne gravity gradiometry surveys. Okay, so the program talks about certain additional, so the policy talks about some additional programs. For example, National Seismic Program, Mission Anveshan, Airborne Gravity Gradiometry Surveys. Note down these points so that you can quote them in your answers. Okay, so when you're talking about these, what is the point that you have to put it under? See, first is governance reforms, second one is technology reforms. Again, I am repeating, we are reading this article as a question answer format. India has to attain energy Atmanirbharta. What are the steps taken by the government on this front? What can be done better? So in that, we are talking about the need. Then we spoke about exploration policies, then you are talking about technology. Okay, in that technology part, there are various programs which will support this exploration policies. For example, seismic program. Then there is a talk about mission Anveshan, AGG surveys. So these 3 points should be there under this technology head, which will support the exploration policies. Okay, that is this paragraph. Next up, you have the role of PSUs. Do we have the production capacities? Okay, that is the third point that you need to focus on. Then downstream infrastructure. Fourth point is downstream infrastructure. What do you mean by downstream? In the entire supply chain, upstream means where you find that gas, exploration, everything. Downstream means when you have the actual product and you want to supply it to the consumer. Do we have enough infrastructure there? For example, we are looking for piped gas, piped natural gas. Okay? So, in many cities, you are directly getting piped natural gas through pipelines instead of cylinders. So, there is a project called city distribution grid, city based natural gas distribution grid. So this will reduce the cost of transporting the gas. That is the next step taken. And these are the measures taken for energy Atmanirbharta till now by the government. Now next up, India also wants to move towards net zero, right? The second half of the article is about this green strategy. See, when we say energy, it is not like we have to completely invest from scratch. Even the traditional oil and gas companies across the world, they are moving towards green energy. Whatever surplus money they have, they are moving towards green energy, building new projects with green energy. So that is what even our companies are doing, because India is one of the leading country in terms of this net zero strategies, trying to reduce the per capita emissions. Even though we have to improve our per capita consumption, because unless and until we are allowed to emit more and more pollutants in the business as usual approach, it is difficult for India to grow. But it will also impact the climate. We are at that inflection point where we have to do both. So for that, green energy is the strategy. Many countries across the world, especially the one in the Gulf, those countries are taking out their money from those profits they got from crude oil and they're reinvesting it in green energy. India traditionally is led by public sector companies, PSUs. Private participation is slightly lower. So what is India doing? Just like we spoke about the role of PSUs, right? So then PSUs now should move towards green energy. That is what the direction of the government indicates. So what are we doing there? In that, we are doing ethanol blending. You know what is ethanol, right? It is the product after fermentation. When you blend it with petrol, it becomes, it will burn and combust as simple as petrol itself, but it's called E20 fuel. 20% of ethanol when blended with petrol will actually bring down the emissions. So that is the first step taken. Also it will reduce the cost. First step taken. Then Feedstock diversification. What do you mean by feedstock? See, ethanol is produced by basically anything that is a carbohydrate resource, carbs. Now, initially, what we used to do is FCI used to procure, right? FCI, Food Corporation of India, it will procure rice and wheat. Due to inefficient management of this rice and wheat, or sometimes in some places even sugar cane produced by the farmers of that region are procured by the sugar mills. This was rotting down. For example, rice and wheat which were laying in the godowns of FCI, they were rotting. That was taken out, used as a feedstock, and with that they used to make ethanol. Even sugarcane, say for example Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra, two largest sugarcane producing states in India, they will produce this sugarcane, and with that ethanol was produced, which is not a healthy trend. This is what Brazil does. There is a MCQ also this year, 2025 prelims question. This is what it is. So, what I am telling is, why are they unhealthy? Unhealthy trends, because the amount of water taken to produce them is very high. And secondly, these crops are food crops. Why are we using food crops? So, we wanted to diversify our feedstock, and that is what we are doing. So, I want you to read this National Biofuel Policy, which came out in 2018, and it talks about 4 generations of biofuels. You can just go to my Telegram channel and search for this. You will get the background. Apart from this, what else did the government do? It started an initiative called SATAT, Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation. So, as a part of this, what did we do? Compressed biogas plants were mandated, and there is a CBG pipeline connectivity for circular energy adoption. What does this mean? We are taking the compressed natural gas and we are fitting it to city buses, for example. Okay, we are starting with public transport. You will see that any new initiative will begin with public transport, whether it's electric buses, gas based buses. So SATAT is an initiative to do that. So the government has taken this step of providing affordable transportation initiatives, the fuels required for that, and as a part of that they are setting up biogas plants. Let's say in a local area of government, let's say a depot, bus depot, they'll fuel the bus there itself, and the compressed biogas will be given to them. So usually this will be nearer to the feedstock to create that biogas. Okay, in places wherever it is feasible, it is set up there. Now, after that, what are the other steps? Green hydrogen, National Green Hydrogen Mission. We already discussed green hydrogen elaborately, so I am not elaborating that point. And then you have here the natural gas pipeline network, which is now a work in progress. So all the steps are taken. Now we have to increase the length of the piped gas line. That is the next step that we are supposed to take. So what is the problem there? Land acquisition, etc. is the problem. So the government is working towards finishing that. Finally, we are speaking about digitally mapping the assets created. See, you have a gas grid, but what is happening on a real-time basis you should know, because it is important for safety. Something happens, if a gas leaks there, it can create huge dangerous situations. So we are digitally mapping through GIS software to understand where is our gas grid. Okay. And finally, there is a scheme for taking it to the consumers. What is that scheme? Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. We are giving subsidy to people to reduce the cost. So these are the steps taken by the government. A quick recap: 2.5x demand is there. Therefore, we have to go for energy Atmanirbharta. What are the steps taken? Firstly, we are talking about the open acreage licensing policy. Then we are talking about the connecting the gas pricing mechanism to the global premiums of oil so that it is competitive. Then we are talking about the technological aspects, the steps taken by the government of India. For example, Mission Anveshan, National Seismic Program. It will give better data for oil exploring companies or gas exploring companies to take up exploration policies with confidence. Okay. Then we have the role of PSUs and how they are transitioning towards green strategies, how we are going for diversification of our feedstock. And then we are talking about initiatives like Satat, where public transportation is taken up. And then we are talking about the natural gas pipeline network expansion and the problems therein. Then we are talking about how the digital integration, digitization of the assets created under this. And finally, we are talking about the scheme. Okay. So this is a question that can be asked in the exam. If we want to move towards energy Atmanirbharta, what are the steps taken by the government and what can be done better? So steps taken by the government, you should write these exact points, otherwise it becomes difficult. Clear? Okay. See, this international relations issue we will discuss. There is nothing much here. Not just Australia. In a separate class, I will tell you a framework through which you have to study any international relations. But let's keep this aside for now because it's not that important directly. In that class, we will cover Australia also. Okay. Now, this is a very simple, straightforward article. Okay. So, the point is about DMH11. DMH11. Then there is this erucic acid. Then FSSAI. So this overall concept, what is the problem statement that we are dealing with? Edible oils, your cooking oils. India, despite being an agricultural hub, more than 50% of our edible oils are imported from elsewhere. Okay, more than 50%. So, India previously came up with a genetically modified crop, mustard. Okay, but the problem with mustard as such is that it has a component called erucic acid. It is almost 5 to 10 times more. The content of erucic acid in mustard that is produced here, traditional varieties, is almost 10 times more than World Health Organization's limits. This DMH11, which has a better yield, is slightly lesser. Okay, let's say if erucic acid content is 50%, 40 to 50% in traditional varieties, it is slightly less, 30 to 40%. But it is still higher. Okay, but still it is reducing, right? So we are supposed to encourage this. This is the central premise of the argument. Why are we supposed to do that? Because the expensive oils cannot be afforded by India's poor, and we need to give them access to healthy fats. It is linked to health also. See, food security is not just about giving access, but it's also giving access to healthy food. Just because it is cheap, we should not give it, right? So what is the alternative? You blend oils, mix a bit of sunflower, then mustard, something, canola oil, rice bran oil, and reduce the cost overall for the consumer. That is what this article is suggesting. Okay, erucic acid will have multifold impact. It will affect our kidneys, our blood pressure, heart diseases, everything. So it is not good. And especially mustard oil is used in the eastern part of the country, Bengal, Odisha, Assam, where people cannot afford, the rich, expensive sunflower oils, etc. Mustard oil is much more cheaper there, but it is dangerous, especially when you fry it at a very high temperature. Fried foods, it is even more dangerous. So the whole article is about promoting GM mustard, because our oil import bill, edible oil, is almost $20 billion. You have to reduce that. So we have to carry out research in the direction of reducing that erucic acid to less than 5% is what this article is saying overall. Okay, these are the two important articles for the day. Go through them, note down the important points in both these articles, and read this genetically modified crops or the whole debate around GMOs. In your environment class or in your environment textbooks, you will see genetic engineering appraisal committee. What is the role of this? Just go through the basics once. Then you will be able to appreciate this article better. Okay? That's it for the day. See you tomorrow.